We are at a time where there are people who are concerned about what's happening with the climate and energy usage. Bitcoin as a total contributor to carbon in the atmosphere. It's not huge, but it does have a lens on it at a time when people are considering this. What is the main FUD? But also, no, I'll come back to the next question. What is the main FUD for you?
So I'll talk about this. Let me give you some perspective, because I looked a lot in terms of the history of analog systems becoming digital systems. And the very first thing that you see from an analog system becoming a digital system are the legacy players. They get disrupted and they get pretty angry. Historically, right, if you look way back to, I mean, I think my favorite example is Ptolemy said that the solar system revolved around the planet Earth, and all religious dogma at the time said we were the center of the universe. Copernicus realized that the Earth revolved around the sun, right? And what did he do with that information? Nothing, because he knew what was going to happen to him if he did. On his deathbed, he released a paper that said, "You guys are wrong. The sun's the center of this universe, and we're revolving around the sun." Galileo found his paper, and said, "Wow, this guy's right." And he wrote nonstop about how the Earth was not the center of the universe and we revolved around the sun. Well, guess what they did to Galileo? They stuck him in a mental institution and beat him to death, and then they dissected his body parts and dropped them all over the countryside. And after 200 years, they realized that he was right, and then they tried to go find him and give him a proper burial. And so that's what happens to you when you disrupt a legacy system. What happened to Galileo? The same thing happened, coincidentally, to this guy, and I always say his name wrong, but it's Ignaz Semmelweis. You know what his crime was? He said all of these women that are having babies, they started in certain hospitals. They were dying at a very it was a pace that was just very unusually bad. And so this guy looks into it and he says, there's germs on your hand. They're not using any cloth. They're not washing their hands. They're not using gloves. He says, there's germs on your hands. You need to wash your hands before you perform an operation. Okay? And guess what they did to this guy? Same thing they did to Galileo. They stuck him in an institution and they killed him because he said doctors aren't clean. And so you see this happening nonstop. If you're going to disrupt the legacy industry, you better be prepared for the legacy industry people to come after you. And so those two guys, and that's just two of 100 stories of people that face the consequences of disrupting big time institutions.
And could we say Julian Assange is a perfect example of that? I can.
Yeah, without getting political, I think that you're seeing this play out over and over again during humanity. There are legacy system people that do not want to go away. You saw with email, which is the funniest one. Email came out, and guess what the United States government and the Postmaster General said? The most efficient, the most secure way, literally like quotes, the most secure way to deliver information between two parties is the U.S. mail, not email. And email, guess what? Needs servers, and it uses a lot of energy, and it's going to destroy the planet, and we need to stop emails. And so the U.S. Postmaster General went to Congress, the United States, and said, we need to stop these emails from proliferating, because if you send 10 emails, you're burning a pound of coal, or whatever the narrative they used. And they actually voted on implementing an email stamp tax in America. Imagine that. And they lost, fortunately, but you still had lots of people on both sides, right, arguing to stop the email. You saw the same thing with the internet, okay? The people that had monopolies basically on information, they didn't like to see people have access to information. So they tried to stop the internet. And guess how they tried to stop the internet? It uses too much energy. You need servers to run the internet. And guess what they said? They said every it was every 5 megabytes of information burned a pound of coal, or whatever it was. It equals about 100 tweets today, what they said burned a pound of coal. And so they tried to shut off the internet because of the energy argument. They tried to stop email because of the energy argument. This is not a new argument. Anytime you see an analog system go to a digital system, you see a non-quantifiable amount of energy running an analog system to a very quantifiable amount of energy running a digital system, and it's really easy to say, oh, you need servers. That's terrible. Well, how much energy did you need to send an actual letter from one place to another, right? You need trucks, you need security, you need buildings, you need CEOs and
airplanes.
I mean, look at traditional analog money. You need to make coins, you need to mine the metal, which is terrible for the environment and releases chemicals. You need to transport the metal to a factory. You need to turn the metal into a coin, right? Then you need trucks and security to transport it to the bank. You need to hand it out. You need tellers, you need bankers, you need CEOs, you need regulatory bodies, you need government. Then you need to use the money. Then the money goes back to the bank. You need security again. And then guess what? They destroy it every 10 years and mine more. If it's paper, they have to cut down more trees or use whatever chemicals they are to make it. So you get these terribly invasive technologies that have been decimating the planet for all these years. And they're like, no, that uses a server. That uses a server. We need to shut it off. And so we see that with Bitcoin. The first thing they say is this is not a new way to argue against a digital technology. This is always the first argument that legacy people use, because you can say, oh, there's a server over there. This is terrible. And so that's the first one. The second one is in 2017, coincidentally, when I was building the first core scientific facility up in the Appalachian Mountains, 2 articles came out, okay? One from Newsweek and one from our buddies at the World Economic Forum. Again, coincidentally, they said the same thing. And it was remarkable what they said. They said that the Bitcoin network is so energy intensive, it's so bad for humanity, so bad for the world economic or ecological condition, that we need to turn it off right now. And if we don't, by 2020, so it's 2017, by 2020, it will consume all of the world's energy. Not a lot, literally says the word all. World Economic Forum, Newsweek, 2017. Well, I'm dealing with investors. I'm building the first large-scale facility, and the mayor, all my investors, my board, everybody's calling me up every day saying, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing? We can't do this. You need to stop. And so thousands of hours of dealing with the energy FUD early on. And here we are today, by the way. It's 2022, right? 2 years after this prediction from the World Economic Forum, 2 years after the prediction from Newsweek, and the prediction was all the world's energy, right? So we know already that's wrong because our lights are on and we're in the middle of a podcast, so we're not using all the energy. But you would assume those 2 organizations would be pretty close to accurate on the amount of energy that's used by the Bitcoin network. So that's the first thing. You have these predictions of human annihilation associated with this. And when you tell people they're going to die, they generally listen to you, right? So they're stoking fear in people, and the people are getting scared, and they're like, they want to know what's going on and what you're doing. Well, that answer of how much energy we're using, we know because there's servers in a data center, so you can measure it. Guess what else we know? We also know how much energy is generated globally on an annualized basis. All of the energy producers provide that information. British Petroleum, Exxon, all the people that provide lots of energy, they acknowledge how much energy they produce or generate every year. And so we have the number. We have the answer. We know how much energy is generated. Now, before I tell you the number, the next stat, and I know you see this all the time too, is they say the Bitcoin network is so bad. It uses more energy than small countries like New Zealand, Norway,
yeah.
New Zealand, the Netherlands. Name a country the Bitcoin network's destroying the planet because it uses more energy than that. That's the same article. That's the same idea. That's the same ridiculousness that the Newsweek and the World Economic Forum is. They're taking the global Bitcoin network, that's servers, and they're comparing it to small countries, which is it's a global comparison. So you can't understand this comparison that these people are making without understanding what the numbers are globally. So we have to understand the significance of the energy used by this network versus the global energy that's generated. How much energy is generated globally, and then how much does this network use? That's it. And we know the answers. The answer is approximately the world every year generates 160,000 terawatt hours of energy. That's the number that's generated. If you listen to Newsweek, the World Economic Forum, or these other people that say the network uses more energy than these small countries, you would think the Bitcoin network uses a lot of that 160,000 terawatt hours of energy. Well, it doesn't. It does not.
Because does it not consider what's wasted as well?
That's a different, I'll get into wasted energy, but we know the terawatt hours of energy of the network. So of the network, the Bitcoin mining network uses 200 approximately terawatt hours of energy of 160,000.
Danny's quickly working out the percentage.
I'm not. I was looking at Cloudmoon's dashboard.
0.000 approximately 2. Sometimes you get anywhere from 0.00014, so 0.14% to 0.2%, depending on what.
Negligible.
It's inconsequential. If you shut the whole network off, nothing happens. Most large industries, they round off the amount of energy they use globally by 1 or 2%. That makes the Bitcoin mining network less than a rounding error. It's a rounding error of any other major industry. It's an inconsequential amount. So a global basis, any of these people that scaremonger on a global energy basis are committing, they're being intellectually dishonest.